came to Scranton mainly because my parents found out that there were like good job opportunities from the Indian community itself. Like there were like relatives of relatives who lived here, and they were like, oh, like there's job opportunities. If you were willing to settle in the area, this is a good time to come, because they were actively hiring. And it was around the recession time too. So my parents, they were like, yes, we want to move. So we've pretty much been in the area in the past like 15 or so years. And we've been in Midtown specifically since 2014. My next door neighbor is an Indian, but then when you go down further in our like row of apartments, we have an Afghani family. We also have an African American family. So there's definitely a lot of different diverse groups, but predominantly it's mostly Indian population where I live. So my mom works at the TJ Maxx warehouse, and a lot of majority of her friends in the company itself they're Indians. Like my mom does not speak any English. She can understand the basics. It's very funny to hear some phrases when I try to teach her. But a lot of it, she was able to basically retain her job and do like a really good job because of the support that she had within her own people, and they really help each other out. And I think the culture at her workspace specifically has adapted to meet the needs of specific Gujarati speaking population. And I think it clearly works for them, because till day, like we often hear new people who might have just came to the United States and they're looking for jobs and to settle their young family, like they're coming to Scranton. Like we see that quite often, and that's truly mainly because of the workforce availability. That's a super common for all of my friends who are my age. They all live at home, and they are really doing well in their careers. I think a lot of it goes hand in hand with being home, because you have that support system. For me, I started here in 6th grade at Northeast Intermediate School, and I think that was definitely a life-changing experience, because I have friends that I made that I'm like best friends for life till day, and I know I'll have those friends for the rest of my life. I think the same time when we moved here, I think there was like an influx of different type of populations in the area as well. So I had friends who were like, majority of them were Indians, but I had friends who were like Hispanic. I had some friends who were just coming from other parts of the world. Like there were a lot of different people. And then we have our ESL classes, which is the English as a second language class. And I think that was like a really, you can see the class was full and we had people from all over the world. So definitely a very positive experience for sure. But it was also like I had other friends who were just coming from India, and they had their language barriers and like cultural differences, and I've seen them get bullied for it too. So like it was like an interesting mix of like emotions, and at the time I think I was also focused on being the cool kid, like I've adapted to this culture, like let me take that on. And I think that was like initial start of like code switching in a way. Like if I really reflect back, and I think I would have never acknowledged it until this age, but back then like it was very important for me to like, and my friend group, to feel like, yeah, like we belong here. Like, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't know what's it like to come from a new country, even though we were just there for like a few years at that point. So I felt like I had a very like American high school experience, but with my Indian friend group. At the time, I was very committed to like, I can stay here, but I definitely want to go somewhere else, whether it's part of school, or whether it's like as a job. So that's when I learned about like Penn State has programs that allows you to stay locally, but then you can go somewhere else after 2 years. When I was at Penn State, I was given opportunities. I think that really opened up my mind and to reflect and kind of like own up some of the pieces of my identity. And eventually I was given the opportunity to start a club for Indian culture, like, start like an association of students that's gonna be like a community focused, where you involve local community, where you're able to be yourself and celebrate some festivals. And it was like all brand new, because we have never truly done it. Like they've had events like this, but not ran by the students. I do want to highlight my temple. I think the reason why, like, my parents definitely, like, especially my mom, I think she's my biggest like motivation when it comes to like going to the temple and not like missing and being active, and she's truly the source of all of that. So when we moved here, I don't think my parents were super focused on like being connected to a temple because they wanted to work, they wanted to like provide for us, but somehow the opportunity came to be like, and we went to the local BAPS Swaminarayan temple, which is located on Oak Street in Scranton, and we met some of the coordinators of the temple at the time, and they're like, yeah, like you should come every Saturday. We have assemblies here, we have classes for kids like me. So there was a lot of activity, so that really helped me like find a place, like almost like a safe space, that regardless of what happens during the week, like we know that Saturday we will go to the temple, we'll feel better, we'll be around our like, you know, people who have the same values. So ultimately, like there's a big factor in Hinduism. We do believe that everything has happened, everything is happening and will happen is because of the grace of God. And what your path is designed is by your guru. So if I reflect back, like coming to Scranton, like, you know, settling here, still being here and like, you know, making hopefully somewhat of a difference in my local community is because of that path that was probably designed for me. My role at Penn State, I started out, I was actually like approached with this opportunity, like, do you want to apply for the diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator position? During that early phase of being a diversity coordinator, I was exposed to a lot of community-oriented work with the MLK Commission, because we celebrate MLK Day on our campus. We also have other programs called diversity circles, where I met a lot of people from the local community, from police officers to educators to you know, other different community leaders. So I think that opened my eyes of like, what is this community all about? Before that, I just had my own understanding, but I learned like, yes, we might be predominantly white in the area, but like there's so much more to this. I became the assistant director of student services and engagement, which is my current role right now. And I think in that role, I'm exposed to students like pretty much going through all kind of like trouble, and they might be, you know, struggling with a lot of things because the impacts of COVID and because of like family traumas or whatever it might be. I definitely think like Scranton is home. Like that's the best way to describe it. And I know a lot of my friends who are my age who have, you know, immigrated to this country and who still reside in this area, they feel the same way. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity. So leveraging on our current people is something that I think the city should definitely focus on. And sometimes there might be like some hard steps you have to take. You may need a translator. You may need to go within those communities, right? It may not just happen sitting in a building or approaching people on the phone. You may have to physically take some steps, right? I think focusing on like what the youth feel about our city is really important. Understanding what are the gaps that they may be experiencing and how can the local government or like, you know, local officials can minimize those gaps. I think having the freedom to be who you are, like belong to whatever community you want to belong to, and, you know, bringing some positive change while being yourself and having like just the freedom to do it is, I think for me, that's what it means to be an American. There's a lot of hopes, right, we may all have for like such a big nation that we are, but definitely moving towards creating like a welcoming environment. And we know that like literally in our country's name, it's the United States of America, right? So focusing on the concept of unity and tolerance will go definitely a long way as a nation, for sure.